Welcome to the Burnout to Lit Up podcast. I'm your host, Erica Del Pozo, occupational therapist, Miami girl, and founder and CEO of Joy Energy Time, where it's our mission to build a better healthcare industry by ending healthcare provider burnout. In these episodes, we'll discuss topics like stress management, personal and occupational well-being, energy, lifestyle, and more. You'll also hear from loads of healthcare professionals like you who provide us with their advice on burnout prevention and share ways that you can become your most lit up self. Ready to get started? Let's do this. Welcome to the Burnout to Lit Up podcast. This is your host, Erica, and I have to be real with you because my whole podcast, this whole thing, the number one goal is to always be real, to provide education and information, to inspire you and reach as many people as possible. But my goal is to always be authentic and have a place where I can share my voice. You know, I love bringing people on. I love letting people share their stories, and I love all the educational episodes and resources that I've shared with you. But I also want to have space in this podcast for me to share me, just me. Because the whole point also of this podcast was a place for me to practice getting comfortable with my voice. Growing up, I always stuttered and I was always quiet because of that. And having this podcast is powerful to me because I have a place to practice coming into my voice and being authentic and transparent. So with that being said, I have to share with you about my little freak out that I had last night. I had a little freak out over the damn website. Okay. If you go to our website, and you know what? I'm sure people think it's fine, but to me, it's a hot mess because Mike, my husband, and I have been working on our website for over a year. And at the beginning, we hired people to set up the WordPress, because that's what we have, to set up any coding or any of that shit that I have no idea about. But we hired some freelancers at first to kind of set up the foundation of WordPress for us. But in terms of editing and the whole aesthetics of it for the past, like I said, almost year, Mike and I have just been figuring it out ourselves, from the copy to the colors and like everything, like the whole look of it, right? And this has been a never-ending journey. And last night, actually, we haven't really talked about the website in months. So it had been a while since I was like, okay, I need to make some changes to the website to reflect where we are right now and where we're going. So yesterday I spent like the whole day writing up edits on a Word doc. And Mike and I go to a cafe and we're working on the website, and he tells me, you know, all your edits, they're way too long. And I thought we weren't going to do this particular method anymore. And I just kind of lost it internally. I start to panic. I'm like, oh my God, okay. And I start to just freak out. And then this builds and builds. And then it created this anxiety for the whole night. And towards the end of the night, like I started to cry in the car. I'm like laughing about it now because I know it's so silly. But I totally let myself just really get swallowed up by my anxiety. And then when these sorts of things happen, I get into really black and white thinking. And the reason why I'm sharing this with you is because I now have a better awareness about what is the cause of these little freakouts. It's not necessarily about a specific font color or font or color or whatever on the website, although that's what causes the freak out. But having this awareness, I can look back at yesterday and be like, I know that I have this tendency to be a perfectionist. And that's really what caused the freak out. Like, I want to be perfect. I want others to look at our business and think that we're perfect. I want our website to reflect that we're professional but fun. I want to look like other people ahead of the game that have had businesses for like 10 years. I want to look like that. We are failures if we don't look like that. And that's what really like it boiled down to. It's these way bigger fears in my head. And back in the day, even like a year ago, let alone 5 years ago, my anxieties and freakouts were much more regular, and I could never really step out of myself and figure it out. In fact, I would get hard on myself for having freakouts, and I would freak out about my freakouts. That was, the whole past of my anxiety was really like kind of stuck in that. And I acknowledged and totally honored the fact that I had this freak out. I had this anxiety about all these things last night that led me down a rabbit hole. I totally accepted that. But what was different is that I've become aware that, okay, that happens, that it is what it is. I'm not stuck in it. I'm going to use this to problem solve. What is the bigger issue here? Which is, again, I'm comparing my behind the scenes of starting a business to other successful people that have had businesses for years, right? And then I feel like a failure and I feel behind. And that's not true. That's just a story that I have created for myself because I'm not a failure and I'm not behind. I am where I am in this process. Like, it's just a process. So, I mean, this type of work and this type of awareness has not come to me so easily. And I don't know if you can relate to this, if you have ever had these intense moments of doubt and anxiety. But the difference between back then and now is that, okay, let's say the day after a freak out, like today, I'm not dwelling in that. I've actually learned from it. And I've learned that at the bottom of this are these really deep insecurities. And I know what they are. And I know they're just stories I've made up. And I know that doesn't define the process. And I'm very kind. Like today, I've been so kind to myself and forgiving of myself. Whereas in the past, I would beat myself up and then start the cycle all over again. And then try to be perfect. And I'm not perfect. And then I fail. And it's exhausting. It's exhausting, So I just wanted to be real and be transparent and share that with you and share me and my journey as a person with you, because we're all people and we all can relate. None of us are perfect despite what we see. Sometimes we see people's highlights and we expect that, they're perfect all the time, and we're just stuck with our own behind the scenes. And, I think stepping out of that and realizing we all have things, whether we share them or not, but we're all going through something. So that's that, guys. And thank you for listening. You could always send me a DM and, share with me if, you resonated with that, if you have had anxiety or, you stress yourself out about certain things. I'd love to hear from you guys. It means so much that I can connect with my listeners and people that love the show. So you can always send me an email or a DM, Joy Energy Time. And let's get into today's topic, how to deal with toxic energy at work. So what better way to start this topic than with a real life example? So this real life example of toxic energy at work. Now it's important because it wasn't just one toxic person, it was toxic energy. So it gets a little trickier here. And I have seven ways on how to deal with this. But first, let me share this real life story. If you have ever been in a situation where it's toxic, I'm sure you can relate to this. So this is during my field work as a student. mind you, this is my last field work. I'm still a student. I'm at a facility for 13 weeks. And I have a fieldwork educator, and I'm working at a clinic under her. And there's other occupational therapists there. There's some speech therapists and physical therapy. So this is a pediatric clinic. And you feel it. Again, I'm walking in. Like, I don't know how long this toxic energy was around before I walked in. I mean, I'm pretty sure for a while. But I'm just walking in as a student. I'm there for a little bit and then I'm gone. So this was my experience. I walk in, I meet everyone, I shake the hand of the owner of the clinic, and my stomach completely dropped. Like, when you're on a roller coaster or Splash Mountain, because I love Disney and Splash Mountain. So that little feeling in your stomach when you're about to go down, and it's fun when you're on a roller coaster if you like them. It's not fun if you don't like them. But it's always a fun little stomach drop, especially when they take your photo on Splash Mountain and you get to see that horrible face you made. But I had that little stomach drop, that exact same feeling when I shook the hand of the owner of this clinic, but it wasn't an exciting stomach drop. It was like, oh, this is going to be a long 13 weeks. It wasn't. And it was a vibe. It was a vibe. Like, I don't know how else to put it. In the air, this was in the air at this place. This competitive nature that I think was the reason that this toxic energy came about. And I have a feeling that the owner of the clinic had really high expectations for everyone, and that bred this competitive, toxic nature from my perspective. And I would define it as toxic because it affected everyone. It wasn't just one person like misbehaving or being difficult. It wasn't that. It was everyone had an alternative motive. You know what I mean? Like I didn't feel like I could let my guard down, and I didn't see anyone let their guard down. There were other students there, and we had to work together on projects. So we would work outside. We would go to a cafe during the weekend, and we would work on this project for our field work, and we would talk, and we would, share these feelings that I thought it was just me, but no, it was all the students, because there was 2 other girls. And we felt better because we each thought it was just us. But when we all came together and shared, hey, there's some toxic energy, there's some weird vibes, then we realized, okay, it's not just us. One of the students said that she felt that her supervisor was being passive aggressive towards her 100% of the time. And I was like, damn, I feel the same way. Mine is passive aggressive like 90% of the time. There was something off, and I think people were afraid to lose their jobs. I think people had to one-up everyone. I think you had to almost brag about how much work you did outside of work, like how much research and documentation, and how much you had to really that was that type of place. I didn't feel like anyone was breathing. I mean, there wasn't like this breath of let's relax, very uptight, intense, competitive, toxic energy. And it was just frustrating being a student because I'm a student, so I don't really have much to compare this to other than maybe one other field work I did, which was that other field work was amazing. But this particular place, I'm like, well, I hope I don't ever work for a place like this. I just felt like the alternative motive, everything was off. So I don't know if you've ever been in a situation like that. I think also some people ganged up against other people. Like some clinicians were left out of the inner loop, and I think that created some tension. So that was awkward for a student to observe. Like, for example, one of the clinicians that was quote unquote left out of this inner loop, from, again, my perspective, she was probably starving. So, because they were working all day, like 30-minute lunch break, something like that, maybe 45 minutes, and no breaks at all in the middle of the day. So she was eating some nuts. But she was treating a patient, but she had the nuts. You know what? I don't even know what it was. It could have been a banana. I don't freaking remember. But she was eating something, a little snack, and she got in trouble for it. And I'm like, ooh. But the other girls probably wouldn't have had gotten in trouble, So that was 5 years ago. That was just an example, a real life story of my experience dealing with toxic energy. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. Toxic energy can lead to a lot of things. It can lead to gossip. It can lead to internal rivalries and conflict. What happens is that people may begin to turn their backs on others and hoard information or hide information, or only share resources with certain people. Resources meaning information or actual physical resources. I've definitely seen, for example, a therapist going out to get coffee for some people, but not others. And I can tell on the others, their faces were like, well, like I would have liked some coffee too. Like, and it's done. And there's one thing if it's done in a way that's unintentional, like, oops, I'm sorry, like I didn't know you wanted that, versus like we're only treating certain people special. So with toxic energy at work, you see all this unfolding, whether you're new to this place or you've been here for a while and it wasn't like this at first, but now it is. You're thinking, okay, what is going on? What happened? There's something in the air. You want to get to the bottom of this before it gets to you, because I think what can happen, and thank God I've never had this experience, but what can happen is that you stay at a place for long enough and it's like you, for better or for worse, you become a part of that culture. And you, especially if you're higher up, if you've been there for a while, if you have seniority, your supervisor, whatever it may be, if there's toxic energy, have you fallen victim to that toxic energy? Are you unknowingly perpetuating this toxic energy because it's become the norm of your clinic? There's a lot of things to think about here. So let's get down to the 7 ways of how to deal with it. So the first one is investigate. Investigate, where is this coming from? What is the root of this toxic energy? So it could be tied to one person, or it could be tied to a group of people. You might not even be sure where it started. It could be tied to the manager or the owner. But let's just assume it's tied to an employee. So you have identified Joe Schmo, and you must start the investigation. Is he dealing with conflicts at home? And usually in the times where I have experienced a toxic person or toxic energy, it's always, in my case, I've always been able to identify some of the possible reasons for it. So during my field work, one of the reasons could have been, well, my supervisor has verbally expressed to her coworkers, and I was in the office and I happened to overhear, that she's 30 something, not married, and eats ice cream for dinner, and she's miserable. And then in another instance from one particular toxic person in the work environment, I could sense, this was my opinion, but I could sense that she was feeling burdened by having children, husband, and having a heavy caseload and duties of being a supervisor. And I could tell she was dealing with a lot. She was juggling a lot there. And so what is the root of this person's behaviors? Is it something at home? Are they going through a divorce, or are they frustrated with something at work? Are they doing it for fun? Because you don't know. Some people can just enjoy making other people's lives miserable because they're miserable. So investigate what could be the main cause of this. Let's just say it comes from one person. So investigate what the main causes could be. Also look for patterns. Is this like a bad week for this person and, you've labeled them toxic too quickly? Is it just a one-time offense, or is this, you can predict it? Like, this is like clockwork. This is a pattern. And I just want to point out the difference between someone that's just difficult and someone that's toxic is that someone that's difficult is just difficult, but they don't really affect the whole team. But what makes something toxic is that it hurts everyone. It's de-energizing and deconstructive, and it can hurt people in different ways. It can threat. It can put a threat. Oh my God, put a threat. Oh my God, it can threaten. It can threaten the actual fabric of your team. I've experienced that also. I've experienced people quitting, multiple people quitting because of one person. Yikes. So it's like the power that a toxic person has is incredible, especially if managers don't identify this person as toxic. And in this case that I just mentioned, this was because these managers were never around. Like they were never on the floor with us, so they cannot see this toxicity in action, right? Whereas on the floor, it affected many people. So my little wheels in my head are turning, thinking about all these examples. So identifying the difference between someone that's difficult and someone that's toxic, and that toxicity can spread into the environment. So number 1, investigate. Number 2, check in. If you feel that the circumstances are right, if you have identified and investigated that this is coming from this person, check in with that person during some quiet time. Never, and this is a big piece of advice, never confront someone in front of other people, especially someone of higher power, maybe a supervisor or even your manager if you're questioning something. Just in general, never confront people in front of others, because psychologically you feel safer when someone is confronting you and you don't have other people to judge you. So if you can, find a quiet area or a private area to confront. I don't like that word, but it's true. Or just to check in. We're just talking about checking in with the person. And checking in doesn't mean attacking or accusing or blaming. Checking in is about asking questions. It's about active listening, reflecting back any information they've told you. The more you can listen and the more you validate and reflect and affirm what they have told you, the more that person understands that you get it. You understand them. Actually, I have had entire conversations with people where I have not given an opinion. I have listened. I have demonstrated, yes, I understand. Keep telling me more. I have demonstrated reflecting and affirming back what they've said. And in one particular case, this person was like, wow, thank you so much for this conversation because they felt heard, because I wasn't offering opinions on how to fix something at this particular point in time. This person needed just to be heard. So maybe this employee, this coworker, whatever, they just need to be heard for a second before you jump in. So hear them out. Hear them out. Let them know you've heard, you've understood. And this next part, only do it if you mean it. Okay? You don't want to be ingenuine. But offer any help. Offer, you know what? This is not something I can help you with, but do you want to speak with the manager? Do you think that would be a good idea? Or offering any help that you may be able to offer. Don't offer anything you can't. Or offer, you know what, I know about this resource, XYZ. This would be a great resource to help you through whatever you're going through. Okay. So I think it's always important to ask a person for permission before you offer advice. And you'll see how the dynamics shift. Okay, so maybe this toxic person has become defensive because they've built these mechanisms to protect themselves. So allowing them the space to share their vulnerabilities and have that space can be empowering. And that could be the thing that changes their behavior sometimes. But if not, then we're going to keep going, okay? So this is step number 3. I mean, you would hope the person would change after just being a good listener and checking in with them. But if not, and then step number 3, objective feedback. So let me be honest here, being assertive and confrontational is not my jam at all. My jam includes many other things. I have many jams, but confronting people is not one of them. So this is hard for me to say, but if there is some toxic energy, if you can tie this back to one person, it's better to stop avoiding and beating around the bush and to get to the root of the problem. Because again, this is a problem. This is affecting everyone on your team or the majority of your team. So this is this depends on the circumstance. If you know this is beyond what you can offer, always involve your manager in dealing with this person, because it may not be your place to offer this sort of feedback. So please keep that in mind. If this is something that it's not really where you feel like, okay, this is your place where you can give some feedback. And again, I can't really think of anything. You would have to decide this for yourself. But providing objective feedback can help a person to understand what it is that they're doing. You know what? Because they might not even be aware of it. Some people live in their own little world and they might not be aware that their behaviors are kind of destructive. So offering objective feedback means that you are giving them specific examples of what they've done, and you can always tie that to how you felt. So not blaming them and saying you're annoying, like a 5-year-old, but saying what happened last week in the office and you told this person so-and-so, or whatever. Just offer objectively what happened with the example and be as explicitly detailed as you can. And maybe at the end you can add, okay, I felt this way, right? Again, this is tricky because this could be you or the manager providing feedback, and there could be a million different scenarios here. But let's say you're the one providing feedback. So tying that example to how you feel. And then if you are a manager, right, you can create a plan. You could take a little bit more of the lead here and create a plan with this employee that would include something tangible, some clearly stated goals for how to act moving forward in certain scenarios. Let's say these sort of toxic behaviors only occur around certain people in the office, or they occur, like identify the context in which they occur and create some clearly stated goals. If you're an employee and you're just talking to a coworker and, you're letting them know how you feel, what is important is opening the conversation for a two-way conversation, right? So even asking this person, have you noticed anything about my performance or my behaviors that you would like to bring up? Because you don't know what, maybe someone sees something that you're doing and it may not be the best either, right? We have to be open to being transparent and having this conversation. So if you're the one having this conversation with your coworker, providing objective feedback and opening the conversation so it's two ways, and open to collaborating and problem solving. So understanding understanding the situation at hand and offering any solutions to problem solve. Okay, so number 4 is get real. Some people don't change, or they won't change. And if this person has no real legal or ethical wrongdoings, they may not be fired. So you have to look at your options. If this person is not going to be fired, for being toxic, or it's not identified as being toxic, but you definitely feel as though it is and it's negatively impacting people, you have to realize your options and get real. Like, okay, do I stay here? Am I happy here overall? Is this facility supporting my professional growth? Maybe I can move to a different department or a different floor, or maybe even another location if that facility has multiple locations. But, play some musical chairs and figure out, is it a matter of just me moving around? If not, realize, okay, how harmful is this person? Is this someone that is new? They don't know the rules? Is this deeply ingrained into the fabric of the place you work in? Because if that's the case, then what's going to happen if you continue to stay there and you recognize this as a problem is that it's going to jeopardize your future growth in the company. Most likely, right? So recognize the difference between one bad apple and an entire bad apple tree. I wouldn't want to be in a bad apple tree. Okay, so it might be a matter of maybe I'm not the right place, or maybe there's just one bad apple and it's fine, or maybe I can move around, or we can deal with it another way. But please don't ever settle. Okay. I like that quote. Recognize the difference between one bad apple and a bad apple tree. Guys, you heard it here. Okay, number 5, we're almost done. Document it all. This has definitely happened. We had one, and this was when I wasn't a student anymore. This was in real life as an occupational therapist. There was an employee. She had so much beef with another employee. So she would document and keep track of every little offense the other employee did, because employee A wanted to get employee B fired because employee A identified employee B as toxic. Whereas from my opinion, from my perspective, they were both toxic. Okay. But regardless of the situation, if you find that there is maybe a group of people or there's one particular person and things are happening, document it, right? If it wasn't documented, it never happened. So if you are an employee and you recognize that, okay, your manager is going to require some solid evidence when they take into consideration, this person, how, what's going on, it's important to document. And to further validify the patterns that you're seeing, it would be beneficial to get other people on board. So if this is a big problem, if there's a big offender, then having other employees pitch their observations and having a really strong case, because this can go beyond. Like, this can, being in a toxic workplace can be much more than just gossip. There can be way deeper issues at work. and just keeping everything on paper. If you need to bring this up to your manager and show them the evidence of this person or this group of people, this is the harm that they've been doing over this period of time, it's only going to strengthen the case that this is a problem. Okay, so number 6, build a bubble. So if you can't do anything about it, you've gotten real, this person is a bad apple, or there's several bad apples all around me, build your bubble. Build an imaginary bubble from the top of your head that goes under your feet, and it's very snug, right? There is a hole in your bubble for you to speak and a hole in your bubbles for you to listen. But it has gotten to a point where you know that you must build yourself up to not fall into this toxicity. So it might sound silly, but I promise, build this imaginary bubble around you. You can make it whatever color you want, and know that it might feel like you are entering a war zone at work. That could be how corrosive the environment is. And this bubble, imagine that it's going to protect you. Imagine that it is, it's like a shield. So the spears that are flying at you from all directions, this is quite dramatic, right? But just bear with me. If you see these spears coming at you, imagine they touch, as soon as they touch your bubble, they bounce right off. Nothing's going through that bubble. It's to protect you. It's to protect your energy. We all know how energy draining a toxic work environment can be. Toxic people, we all know that there are energy vampires, which that is a whole other episode in and of itself. But building this bubble will give you a visualization that you do not need to let this get into you. You can see it, you can deal with it, it can be around you, but it's not going to get into you. And as soon as you leave work, you take off your bubble and you leave it there. And when you leave work, this leads into the very last tip, number 7, don't bring these issues home. Yeah, don't bring these issues home. Leave it at work. Your bubble is for work. Once you leave, it's happened to me where all this toxicity builds up, and as soon as I get into my car, as soon as I get home, I complain about it for the whole night. Back then, my fiance, I would complain about it to my friends, or I would just let it affect me. I would let it affect my energy, because whether we like it or not, if we're in an environment where it is toxic, if we're not careful, if we do not build our bubble, then it's getting into us, and it's we have little energy leaks all day long until we get home, and all our energy is basically wiped out. Man, I've just been a part of some really awkward situations. So just building that bubble, and that's happened to me too, where I've had to remember, okay, I have a bubble. It's allowed me to really remove myself from being a part of the situations. So don't bring it home. Go home and completely, if you have to press an imaginary button on your head to turn off your work brain, turn it off. Leave it at work. Engage in some self-care, energizing routines. Take a workout class, take a pole dancing class, take whatever you want. You do you. I like to lift weights. I like to get some deep proprioception in. I love weights. I love yoga. You engage and pursue your interest, girl or man, or whoever you are. You pursue your interest, because I can tell you, I'm raising my hand from my own experience, that toxicity, again, it can, without you being aware of it, it can get into you, and then you could become a part of that system, which is not good at all. We don't want that. We want to be our most lit up selves moving forward, despite what situations we may be facing or dealing with. So to wrap it up, guys, I'm all fired up talking about this. To wrap it up, if you're dealing with toxic energy, investigate. Is it coming from one person, from multiple people? What is the cause? Are there home conflicts? Are there patterns? Number 2, check in. Check in with this person. This is the part in which you will practice active listening, not the part where you offer your opinion right off the bat or judge. This is the part where you allow that person to know that you are listening and you can help them. Or if not, you can tell them who can help them. Number 3, objective feedback. If this is your job or your manager's job, whatever, objective feedback is most often necessary when dealing with toxic people, and staying away from unhelpful phrases and using objective, clear, specific examples and coming up with a game plan. Number 4, get real. Get real if, some people don't change. So you have to assess if you are working in the right place. Maybe you can move to a new department. Maybe you have to leave. 5, document it all. Keep track of these situations so that you can present a strong case to your manager. Number 6, build a bubble. Build your own little fort. Keep the negative energy out. And number 7, don't bring those issues home. You do you at home and be your most lit up self. All right, guys, that's that. Talk about toxic energy at work 101. So in October, be ready for interviews. I have a lot of interviews that are going to come out in October. Can't wait to get back to sharing interviews here. And I had some really good conversations. I can't wait for October. I can't wait for you guys to hear them. So have a great rest of your day. Sometimes I talk too fast. Have a great rest of your day. Share this episode with a friend, a family member, your godmother, your brother, your sister, your abuela, your coworkers, your managers. Share this with everyone that you feel like could benefit from making the work a better place. And I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Mwah. Goodbye. Thanks so much for listening. Like what you're hearing? Subscribe to our podcast, rate, and write a review on iTunes. It would mean the world to us. We come out with new and exciting content each week that will help you slay your burnout beast. So share the show with your friends and your coworkers so we can build a better healthcare industry together. Thanks again.